Alrighty. That brings things to the top of page 36. Page 40, examine with them. I asked, perhaps from the perspective of Aryeh Kaplan's Sefer Yetzirah, please explain to me very briefly the concept of the Hebrew word bachin. Do not digress into verbosity. Here is an answer. In the context of Aryeh Kaplan's commentary on the Sefer Yetzirah, bachin means to examine, test, scrutinize, assay, or discern by careful investigation. Kaplan frequently translates forms of this root as examined, tested, or investigated. It implies more than merely looking at something, it means probing its inner nature to determine its true qualities. In the Sefer Yetzirah, where one finds phrases such as he examined, weighed, and transformed, often associated with the letters, bachin refers to the contemplative discernment of relationships and structures within creation. It is an act of discriminating insight, discovering the hidden properties and connections of things. Very briefly, bachin equals to test, examine, scrutinize. Connotes discernment through investigation. In Kaplan's Kabbalistic context, it often suggests meditative or intellectual probing of the mysteries embodied in the letters and Sephirot. Related idea, separating appearance from essence through careful examination. A useful biblical example is Psalm 26:2. Examine me, O Lord, and prove me, try my reins and my heart. Here the Hebrew uses bachin, conveying a thorough testing of the inner being rather than a superficial inspection. I asked, perhaps from the perspective of Aryeh Kaplan's Sefer Yetzirah, please explain to me very briefly the concept of the Hebrew word shaker. Do not digress into verbosity. Here is an answer. In Aryeh Kaplan's discussion of the Sefer Yetzirah, shaker means to search out, investigate deeply, explore to the limit, or probe into hidden depths. Compared to bachin, which emphasizes testing and examining, shaker implies a deeper penetration into a mystery or underlying reality. Very briefly, bachin equals examine, test, scrutinize. Shaker equals investigate deeply, search out, probe hidden depths. In Kabbalistic usage, shaker often denotes inquiry into matters that lie at the boundaries of human understanding. This is relevant to Sefer Yetzirah because the text repeatedly warns that there are limits beyond which one should not attempt to penetrate. A biblical example is Psalm 145:3. And his greatness is unsearchable. The word translated unsearchable is from shaker, meaning that God's greatness cannot be fully fathomed, no matter how deeply one investigates. Thus, in Kaplan's context, shaker suggests profound metaphysical investigation, while also hinting at the recognition that some mysteries ultimately transcend human comprehension. I asked, perhaps from the perspective of Aryeh Kaplan's Sefer Yetzirah, please explain to me very briefly the concept of the Hebrew word machon. Do not digress into verbosity. Here is an answer. In Aryeh Kaplan's reading of the Sefer Yetzirah, machon means a fixed place, established locus, or stable station within reality. Very briefly, machon equals a set, firm, established place, or foundation point. Connotes stability and structure, as opposed to movement or inquiry. In Sefer Yetzirah language, it often implies a cosmic seat or structured point where forces are anchored. In Kaplan's framework, where creation is described in terms of letters, dimensions, and configurations of reality. Muchon suggests the fixed structural locations within the unfolding cosmos, the points where divine ordering becomes settled or concretized rather than explored, Shaker, or tested, Bachan. I asked, without pretense of that which has been discussed heretofore, please provide me the KJV passage, 1 Kings 8, 37-42. Then, please explain briefly the context of this passage. Put emphasis on verse 39. If it seems relevant, and not just fanciful, please explain how Kabbalists have, and not might, but have interpreted verse 39. If there is scant relevance, do not make up a Bologna answer. Please keep it all under 400 words. Here is an answer. 1 Kings 8, 37-42, KJV. 37 If there be in the land famine, if there be pestilence, blasting, mildew, locust, or if there be caterpillar, if their enemy besiege them in the land of their cities, whatsoever plague, whatsoever sickness there be. 38 What prayer and supplication soever be made by any man, or by all thy people Israel, which shall know every man the plague of his own heart, and spread forth his hands toward this house. 39 Then hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and forgive, and do, and give to every man according to his ways, whose heart thou knowest, for thou, even thou only, knowest the hearts of all the children of men. 40 That they may fear thee all the days that they live in the land which thou gavest unto our fathers. 41 Moreover concerning a stranger, that is not of thy people Israel, but cometh out of a far country for thy name's sake. 42 For they shall hear of thy great name, and of thy strong hand, and of thy stretched out arm when he shall come and pray toward this house. Brief context. This passage is part of Solomon's dedication prayer for the first temple in Jerusalem. He is asking that the temple become a focal point where prayers are directed and where divine response, especially forgiveness and judgment, can be mediated in times of national or personal crisis. The structure is cumulative. Famine, plague, siege, personal affliction, and even the prayers of foreigners are all included. It establishes the temple not merely as a physical structure, but as a spiritual interface between Israel and God. Emphasis on verse 39. Verse 39 is central. For thou, even thou only, knowest the hearts of all the children of men. The key idea is exclusive divine knowledge of the inner heart, not just actions, but intentions, motives, and concealed states of consciousness. Kabbalistic perspective, carefully grounded. In Kabbalistic tradition, especially in Zoharic and later interpretive streams, verse 39 is frequently understood as pointing to the distinction between outer action, Ma'aseh, inner intention, Kavanah/Lefpinami. Only the divine, often associated with Ein Sof's hidden knowledge expressed through the upper Sephirot, especially Binah as inner understanding, has access to the true interiority of the heart. Thus, knowing hearts is not merely cognitive knowledge, but total apprehension of the inner spiritual configuration of a person, beyond what is accessible to prophecy, court judgment, or ritual law. In that sense, the temple prayer becomes a metaphysical statement. Human systems judge behavior, but only the divine reality perceives inward intention. I asked, without pretense of that which has been discussed heretofore, please provide me the KJV passage, Psalms 89, 12, 17. Then, please explain briefly the context of this passage. On verse 15. If it seems relevant, and not just fanciful, please explain how Kabbalists have, and not might, but have interpreted verse 15. If there is scant relevance, do not make up a Bologna answer. Please keep it all under 400 words. Here is an answer. Psalm 89:12, 17, KJV. 12 The north and the south thou hast created them, Tabor and Hermon shall rejoice in thy name. 13 Thou hast a mighty arm, strong is thy hand, and high is thy right hand. 14 Justice and judgment are the habitation of thy throne, mercy and truth shall go before thy face. 15 Blessed is the people that know the joyful sound, they shall walk, O Lord, in the light of thy countenance. 16 In thy name shall they rejoice all the day, and in thy righteousness shall they be exalted. 17 For thou art the glory of their strength, and in thy favor our horn shall be exalted. Brief context. Psalm 89 is a psalm of Ethan the Ezrahite, reflecting on God's covenant with David. It begins with praise of divine sovereignty and cosmic order, then transitions into the tension between that covenant promise and Israel's later historical suffering. These verses, 12, 17, sit in the opening praise section, emphasizing God's creative power, moral governance, and the blessed state of those aligned with divine order. Emphasis on verse 15. Blessed is the people that know the joyful sound, they shall walk, O Lord, in the light of thy countenance. Key phrase, joyful sound, teruah/trumpet blast, ritual call, or awakened proclamation. The verse links. Recognition of divine signal, joyful sound. Alignment with divine presence, light of thy countenance. Resulting blessedness and right conduct, walk in the light. It is not merely auditory, it implies spiritual attunement to a divine summons or resonance. Kabbalistic interpretation, well-attested themes. In classical Kabbalistic reading traditions, especially Zoharic and later Hasidic/Kabbalistic commentary streams, verse 15 is often understood in terms of spiritual responsiveness to divine emanation. The joyful sound is associated with teruah, one of the shofar blasts, which in Kabbalistic symbolism corresponds to inner awakening and disruption of spiritual stagnation. Walking in the light of your countenance is linked to the flow of divine light, or Ein Sof as it is filtered through the Sephirot, often associated with Tiferet as harmonized revelation. Knowing the sound implies not hearing physically, but attuning consciousness to divine emanation, Dvayakut attachment. Thus, the verse is read not as poetic metaphor alone, but as describing a state of spiritual alignment where the soul responds correctly to divine vibration and is illuminated by divine presence. I asked, tell me about Hikin. Here is an answer. Hikin, / comes from the Hebrew root, kvn, in its causative form, meaning to prepare, establish, set in place, or make ready. Very briefly, Hikin equals he prepared / he established / he set into order. Implies intentional arrangement toward a fixed purpose. Carries a sense of bringing something from potential into ordered readiness. In classical Hebrew usage, and often in biblical style, it can refer to preparing a place, establishing conditions, setting something in its proper structure or function. In a Sefer Yetzirah style conceptual frame, Kaplan's approach. Within Aryeh Kaplan's reading of Sefer Yetzirah, Hikin fits into the broader language of cosmic ordering verbs actions like weighing, measuring, forming, establishing, So Hikin points specifically to the stage where reality is not just conceived, but stabilized into structured readiness, a step before manifestation is fully articulated. In that sense, Shaker equals probing inward, investigation. Batchin equals testing/assaying. Hikin equals setting in order/preparing structure. So Hikin is the moment of bringing things into prepared alignment, where potential becomes organized form. I asked, without pretense of that which has been discussed heretofore, please provide me the KJV passage, Psalms 104, 3-7. Then, please explain briefly the context of this passage. Put emphasis on verse 5. If it seems relevant, and not just fanciful, please explain how Kabbalists have, and not might, but have interpreted verse 5. If there is scant relevance, do not make up a Bologna answer. Please keep it all under 400 words. Here is an answer. Psalm 104:3, 7, KJV. 3 Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind. 4 Who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers the flaming fire. 5 Who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. 6 Thou coveredst it with the deep as with a garment, the waters stood above the mountains. 7 At thy rebuke they fled, at the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. Brief context. Psalm 104 is a creation psalm, closely parallel in tone and imagery to Genesis 1. It describes God as the sovereign architect of the cosmos, ordering heavens, earth, waters, winds, and living beings. Verses 3-7 focus on cosmic structuring, especially the control of chaotic waters and the establishment of stable order. Emphasis on verse 5. Who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. This verse emphasizes divine establishment of cosmic stability. The earth is a fixed, ordered structure. Contrast between chaotic waters, Tehum, and firm foundations. The imagery is architectural. The world is set so it will not collapse into primordial instability. Kabbalistic interpretation, grounded traditions. In classical Kabbalistic sources, especially Zoharic cosmology and later commentaries, this verse is understood within the framework of creation as structured emanation rather than physical construction. Foundations of the earth are often associated with Yesod and Malkut, the Sephirotic interface where higher spiritual forces become stabilized in the lower world. The not being removed forever is read as the ongoing sustaining flow, Shafat, from the upper Sephirot that continuously maintains existence. The foundation is not purely material, but the spiritual anchoring point that prevents reality from collapsing back into chaos, Tohu. In this reading, the verse is not only about a one-time act of creation, but about continuous ontological maintenance. Existence persists because divine structure is perpetually holding it in place. Thus, verse 5 is understood as describing the permanent stabilizing interface between divine emanation and the physical world, ensuring that creation remains ordered and does not revert to undifferentiated chaos. I asked, tell me about Shafat. Here is an answer. Shafat is a central term in Jewish philosophical and Kabbalistic thought meaning flow, overflow, or divine abundance. Very briefly, Shafat equals the continuous flow of influence, vitality, or sustenance. Comes from a root meaning to pour forth/overflow. In Kabbalistic language, It describes how divine life force is transmitted into creation. Core idea in Kabbalah. In Kabbalistic systems, including the Zoharic tradition and later systematic Kabbalah, Shafat is the channel-like transmission of divine vitality from the infinite, Ein Sof, through the Sephirot into the created world. It is not static energy, but ongoing flow. Graduated transmission, filtered at each level. Sustaining presence that maintains existence moment by moment. How it functions conceptually. The upper realms, often associated with Keter, Chakamat, Bina, are sources of abundant emanation. The Sephirotic system acts as a structured filtering and shaping mechanism. The lower world receives Shafat as life, sustenance, intellect, blessing, and existence itself. Moral/spiritual dimension. In many Kabbalistic and later Hasidic readings, human actions, mitzvot, prayer, intention, can open or channel Shafat. Improper conduct is sometimes described as obstructing or constricting its flow. So Shafat is not merely cosmological, it is also relational, linking divine reality and human spiritual responsiveness. In one line, Shafat is the continuous divine outpouring that flows through structured levels of reality to sustain existence. I asked, perhaps from the perspective of Aryeh Kaplan's Sefer Yetzirah, please explain to me very briefly the concepts of Yotzer, Bara, Asa, and then tell me about Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah, and Atzilut. When you're done that, please quote the KJV Isaiah 43:7 and tell me how this quote might be relevant. Here is an answer. From Aryeh Kaplan's Sefer Yetzirah framework, these terms describe levels and modes of creation, moving from divine intent to fully manifested reality. 1. Yotzer, Bara, Asa, // These are three verbs describing stages of creation. Yotzer equals forms/shapes. Giving structure or configuration, like forming clay. Bara equals creates/brings into being. Introducing something new at a higher, more abstract level, often ex nihilo in classical theology. Asa equals makes/completes/actualizes. Finalization in concrete reality. Kaplan-style reading. They are often understood as descending levels of manifestation. Conceptual formation, archetypal creation, physical realization. 2. Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah, Atzilut, the four worlds. These are the four cosmic levels in Kabbalah, used extensively by Kaplan. Atzilut equals emanation. Closest to the infinite, Ein Sof, no separation yet. Bria equals creation. Realm of pure archetypes, throne world, beginnings of distinct existence. Yetzirah equals formation. Structuring of spiritual forces, angels, patterns, emotional/intellectual forms. Asiyah equals action/making. Physical world and its concrete reality. Key idea. These are not separate places, but levels of reality or consciousness, with each lower world receiving and structuring the flow, Shafat, from above. Relationship between the verbs and worlds, Kaplan-style mapping. A common interpretive alignment is Atzilut, pure divine emanation, beyond normal verb structure. Bria corresponds strongly with Bara. Yetzirah corresponds with Yotzer. Asiya corresponds with asa. So the verbs describe the process, and the worlds describe the realms in which that process becomes stabilized. 3. Isaiah 43:7, KJV. Even every one that is called by my name, for I have created him for my glory, I have formed him, yet I have made him. Relevance. This verse is almost a direct triadic statement of the same structure. Created, bara, biriya, archetypal existence. Formed, yitzarti/formed, yetzirah, structured shaping. Made, asa, asiya, final actuality. Kaplan-style insight. Isaiah 43:7 compresses the entire metaphysical ladder of creation into one verse, reflecting the Sefer Yetzirah model where reality unfolds through progressive structuring from divine intention into physical existence, all ultimately oriented toward divine glory, kavod. Alrighty. This brings things to mid-page 43 thereabouts.